Most days just come and go. You wake up, go to work, come home, and nothing really changes. But sometimes, without any warning, life flips in a moment you don't see coming. And that's what happened to her. Claire wasn't rich. She wasn't famous. She was just a tired waitress, trying to make it through another rainy afternoon. She had no umbrella. Her shoes were soaked, and her coat didn't do much against the cold. But as she stepped out of the diner, heading home to check on her sick mom, she saw something that made her stop. A little boy, maybe 6 years old, standing all alone in the rain. No one with him. No jacket. No cover. Just standing there, soaked through, looking lost. People walked by, like they didn't see him. Too busy. Too rushed. Too dry to care. But Claire, she couldn't just walk past. So she did the only thing that felt right. She handed him her umbrella, kneeled down beside him, and stayed with him until someone came. She didn't ask for his name. She didn't expect anything in return. She just cared. What Claire didn't know was that someone was watching. Someone sitting inside a black car down the block. Someone who didn't miss a single thing she did. That little boy wasn't just any child. And the man who came to get him was someone with more money than most of us could ever imagine. He didn't say much that day, but he never forgot her face, or the way she gave without asking for anything. He thought that was the end of it, but it wasn't. It was just the beginning. If this moment pulled at something deep inside you, don't forget to subscribe. Like this video if it touched your heart. And stay with us because the rest of this story only gets more powerful. 3 days passed. The city moved on. The rain cleared. And for most people, that moment, the umbrella, the child, the soaked stranger, would have faded into memory. But not for him. His name was Ethan Cole. If you looked him up, you'd see headlines. Tech giant. Billionaire. Private jets. Magazine covers. But behind the photos and boardrooms was a man who hadn't felt anything real in a very long time. That day in the rain stayed with him. Not just because of his son, Noah, but because of her. The woman who didn't ask questions. Who didn't recognize him. Who gave everything she had in the most ordinary way. He couldn't shake it. Not her soaked hair or the way she looked at his son like he mattered. So he came back. Not with a plan. Not with a grand entrance. He just showed up. Quietly. In a gray hoodie. No entourage. No suits. Just another man walking into a small-town diner with tired eyes. It was late morning. A few regulars sat by the windows, nursing coffees and sharing old stories. The place smelled like burnt toast and scrambled eggs. She was there. Claire. Moving between tables with that same worn-out grace. Juggling plates and refilling mugs, her hair pulled back, eyes focused. She didn't see him at first. She was busy, too busy to notice the man sitting in the corner booth watching her like he was remembering something important. He didn't speak. He just listened. Listened to the way she called her customers by name. How she gave the older man by the window an extra muffin because he looked like he needed one today. He watched her hand a to-go cup to a teenage boy who clearly hadn't paid, saying, "Pay me next week, kid. Just get warm." She still didn't see him. Ethan sat there for nearly an hour, barely touching his coffee. And when she finally did walk over to his booth, she looked at him like any other stranger. "Refill." That was all she said. No recognition. No questions. Just kindness. The same kind she gave everyone. He nodded. "Yeah. Thanks." She poured, smiled faintly, and moved on. It was a small moment, but it meant more to him than most people could understand. Because for the first time in years, he wasn't being treated like a billionaire. He was just a man, sitting in a booth, watching someone who reminded him what real looked like. Later that day, when he got back in the car, his assistant asked him if he'd found the woman. He didn't answer right away. Then quietly he said, "She's not someone you just find. She's someone you notice." And he planned to keep noticing. If this moment stirred something in you, if it reminded you that sometimes the quietest people leave the loudest impact, take a second to subscribe. Hit like if you're still with us. And keep watching because the next chapter, that's when everything starts to change. Ethan kept coming back. Not every day. Not enough to seem obvious. But just enough to learn the rhythm of her life. Tuesday mornings she worked the early shift. Thursdays she wore a faded gray hoodie under her apron. probably because the diner ran cold and the heat only works halfway. On Fridays, she brought a small container of soup to a woman who lived in the alley behind the drugstore, slipping it into her bag during her lunch break. She didn't talk much about herself. Most customers didn't ask, and she didn't offer. But Ethan listened closely. He picked up the pieces, how she mentioned her mom once, in passing, said she was a little under the weather, then changed the subject. How she always checked her phone around noon and seemed relieved when it didn't ring. How she always left with a tired smile, but never once complained. It took 2 weeks before she started sitting down with him, just for a few minutes on her break. It started with light conversation. Weather. Coffee. The radio station playing in the background. She still had no idea who he was. And he didn't offer it. He gave a different last name. Said he was just visiting town, helping with a local renovation project. It wasn't a full lie, but it wasn't the truth either. For the first time in years, he wanted someone to know him before they knew his name. She called him Mystery Man once jokingly, when he dodged a question about his job. He smiled. Said he liked keeping things simple. Their talks got longer. Sometimes they sat outside during slow hours, sipping coffee from paper cups, watching the neighborhood go by. He asked about the city, what she liked, what she'd change. She told him about growing up there, about how things used to be, about how everything got more expensive and somehow less kind. He listened more than he spoke. She asked about family once. He paused before answering. Said his son was the best part of his life, and the hardest. She nodded slowly, like she understood that kind of weight. She didn't press. She just said, parenting doesn't come with a manual. You just give what you have, and pray it's enough. That night, Ethan sat awake in his hotel room longer than usual. He looked at a photo of Noah on his phone, and thought about Claire's words. He had built entire systems, companies, platforms, international teams, but when it came to parenting, he still felt like he was guessing. The next day, he brought Noah with him. Claire didn't expect it. Her eyes widened a little when she saw the boy standing beside him, shyly holding a toy dinosaur in one hand. She bent down to his level and said, "Hi there. What's your name?" Noah mumbled it, then looked at Ethan for reassurance. Claire smiled. "Well, Noah, I've got the best chocolate chip pancakes in town. But they're only for kids who tell good stories." Noah lit up. Told her about his toy, about how it could roar if you pressed its back leg. Claire listened like he was telling the most important story in the world. They spent the afternoon together. Noah sat in the booth drawing pictures on napkins while Ethan and Claire talked. It felt easy, normal, like something that had been happening for years instead of hours. Ethan watched the way Noah leaned toward her. The way he laughed more than usual. The way Claire instinctively wiped syrup from his chin without thinking. It felt right. But with that feeling came something else. A quiet fear Ethan hadn't expected. Because the closer he got, the more he realized how much he hadn't told her. And the more she opened up, the harder it became to keep hiding. He learned her mother's name was Helen. That she'd worked in a library before the stroke. That now she could barely leave the house, and Claire was her only caregiver. No siblings. No help. Just long nights and short paychecks. She didn't say any of it for pity. Just stated it like a fact. Like breathing. One evening, as Claire walked out after her shift, she found Ethan sitting on the curb waiting. She smiled. "Are you always this patient?" He shrugged. "I like the quiet." She sat beside him. Pulled her hoodie tighter. The streetlights buzzed above them. A dog barked in the distance. For a while, they didn't speak. Then she said softly, "It's funny. You talk like someone who's seen a lot. But you still sit here like you're figuring it all out." He looked down at his hands. "Maybe that's exactly it." She nodded. Didn't ask anything more. Just sat there with him, letting the silence do the work. That night, Ethan wanted to tell her who he really was. What her kindness had meant that day in the rain. That the child she sheltered was his son. That he wasn't some quiet contractor on a local project, but one of the most powerful men in the city. But he didn't. Because for the first time in a long time, someone saw him without the layers. Without the name. Without the noise. And he wasn't ready to lose that just yet. Time has a way of speeding up when things feel right. Days started blending together. A morning coffee here, a shared laugh there. Claire had started expecting him, even if she never said it out loud. He never said he was staying in town, but she stopped asking. And somehow, it all just kept unfolding like it was meant to. But beneath that growing comfort, something was shifting. Quietly, Ethan felt it first when Noah asked to visit the diner, even on days they had no reason to go. When he started drawing pictures of 3 people sitting at a table. When he called Claire the pancake lady, and asked if she could come to his school concert. It was subtle, but it was there. Noah was starting to see her as someone who belonged. And Ethan felt it too. More than he wanted to admit. Because this wasn't just some temporary escape anymore. It was starting to feel like something permanent. Something he wanted to protect. But the weight of what he hadn't told her was getting heavier. Every time she laughed at something he said, or handed him a cup of coffee with that quiet smile, a part of him felt like he was lying. He had told himself he just wanted to be seen for who he really was. Not his bank account, not his title. But the longer it went on, the more it felt like hiding. And there's only so long you can hide before something forces your hand. That moment came one cold evening, just after closing. Claire hadn't seen him that day. He'd been in meetings, real ones, with lawyers and investors and stockholders. And by the time he reached the diner, she was already gone. But what he saw when he got there stopped him. Her manager was locking up. And there, by the dumpster out back, Claire stood arguing with someone, an older man with a clipboard and a suit jacket too clean for that alley. Ethan stayed back, watching, listening. The conversation wasn't loud, but the tension in Claire's voice said everything. Something about overdue notices. Medical bills. Her mother. The man handed her an envelope and walked off. Claire leaned against the wall for a long time, her face buried in her hands. Ethan stepped forward. She turned, startled, eyes already red. She wiped at her face quickly. Didn't think you'd be here this late. He didn't ask what was wrong. Not yet. He just stood beside her. After a long silence, she finally said, "They're raising her treatment costs again. And I'm already behind. I'm trying, but it's just," her voice cracked. "I'm doing everything I can." He looked at her. Wanted to fix it. Every part of him wanted to pull out his phone, make a call, wire money, erase the problem. But he didn't. Because she wasn't asking for help. She was just telling the truth. And that truth broke something open inside him. The next day, he tried anyway. Quietly. He called the hospital. Tried to cover the bill anonymously. Told them to say it came from a patient fund. But Claire was smarter than that. She found out within 24 hours. And she was furious. Not because the bill was paid, but because he did it behind her back. She showed up at the diner the next day with her jaw tight and eyes cold. Waited until he was alone at his booth. Then sat down. "I don't need saving," she said. "You think because I'm struggling, I want someone stepping in like I can't stand on my own." He tried to explain. That it wasn't about control, it was about care. That he just wanted to help. She shook her head. "You don't even know me," she said quietly. "You think you do, but you're just another man with money trying to patch something with a check." That's when he knew he had to tell her. Everything. He told her who he was. What he did. That the child she helped in the rain was his son. That the umbrella wasn't just a gesture. It was the moment he realized someone like her existed in a world he had stopped believing in. Claire didn't say anything for a long time. She just stared at him. Like she was trying to figure out how much of the last few weeks had been real. And when she finally spoke, her voice was calm. Too calm. So the quiet man with coffee and a soft voice was never really just passing through, was he? He didn't try to deny it. "No. But everything I told you about how I felt, about Noah, about this place, about you, that was real." She stood up slowly. "You should have told me." Then she walked away. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan didn't know if he'd ever see her again. That night, Claire sat on the edge of her mother's bed, the hospital lights low, her heart still aching. She looked at the envelope on the table, the one with the paid bill, and couldn't decide whether to be grateful or angry. He meant well. She knew that. But trust, once cracked, doesn't mend with good intentions. And Ethan? He sat at home, staring at a photo of Noah's drawing, 3 people at a table. One of them is missing now. And he wondered if some things, once broken, could ever be fixed. The silence between them lasted longer than either of them expected. 3 days. No calls. No texts. Just space. Heavy and unspoken. Claire didn't go looking for him. She didn't know what she'd even say if she did. And Ethan, he wasn't used to waiting. But this time, he knew it wasn't about him. It was about trust. About whether the connection they built still meant something when everything was laid bare. He thought about her every hour. Replayed the look in her eyes when he told her the truth. Not anger. Just hurts. The kind of hurt that comes when someone you trusted suddenly feels like a stranger. On the fourth day, Ethan woke before sunrise. The city is still quiet, the sky still dark. He sat on the edge of his bed, phone in one hand, a small velvet box in the other. He bought it weeks ago. Not for a proposal. Not for show. Just something small. A thank you. A reminder. Inside was a silver charm shaped like an umbrella. He had it engraved with one word, everything. Because that's what her kindness had become to him. That umbrella in the rain had started something he hadn't known he needed. And he wasn't ready to let it end. By mid-morning, he was at the diner. Not inside. Just parked across the street. Watching. Waiting. Claire didn't show up. He waited another hour. Still nothing. He asked one of the kitchen staff, someone who recognized him by now. They told him Claire's mother had taken a turn. She was at the hospital. No one knew how serious. He didn't think so. He just drove. When he got there, he didn't go in right away. He sat in the parking lot, hands tight on the steering wheel. For all the power he had, all the things he could control, this moment felt impossibly fragile. But then he saw her. Through the glass. Sitting alone in a corner chair, her arms wrapped around herself, hair tied up, face tired. Not defeated. Just worn down by life. He stepped inside quietly. She looked up when she heard his voice. He didn't say much. Just walked over and sat beside her. A nurse passed by. The hallway clock ticked louder than it should have. For a while, they didn't speak. Then, softly, he said, "I never wanted to be someone who made your life harder." She stared straight ahead. "You didn't. You just made it complicated." He nodded. He could take that. After a long pause, she finally looked at him. "You could have told me the truth from the beginning." "I know. But you didn't. Because I didn't think I'd matter to you if you knew." That hung in the air. He meant it. And she knew. "You mattered because of who you were with Noah," she said. "Not because of your money. That's what hurts." He pulled something from his coat. The small box. Opened it and held it out. "I didn't come here to fix anything. I just wanted you to know, you changed everything for me." She looked at the charm. The tiny silver umbrella. She didn't take it right away. Just stared at it, her eyes glossy. "Why does this feel like the first real thing anyone's given me in a long time?" He smiled gently. "Maybe because it is." Moments passed. Then she took it. Slowly. Her fingers closed around the box. "You still have a lot to learn," she said. "About trust. About showing up." "I know. But you're trying." "I am." A soft breath left her lips. "That's something." The next morning, she found him at her door. Not with flowers. Not with a check. With groceries. A box of soup. A pack of tea her mom liked. A scarf she once said she missed. He wasn't coming to impress her anymore. He was coming to be present. The way someone shows up when it matters. And she let him in. Not all the way. Not yet. But enough. Enough to set an extra plate at the table. And he kept coming. Every day something small. A thoughtful item. A hot meal. A joke she needed to hear after a long shift. Some days he didn't say much. He'd just drop by to walk with her to the pharmacy or wait in the car during her mother's appointments. No pressure. No promises. Just presence. Real and consistent. Claire had been alone for a long time. She didn't trust me easily. But Ethan wasn't rushing her. He was learning what it meant to show up for someone without needing a spotlight. And slowly, she began to trust that maybe, just maybe, this was different. Her mother, Helen, began to improve. She smiled more. Ate better. Started humming to herself while folding laundry. One afternoon, while Ethan helped fix the broken handle on the hallway cabinet, Helen leaned in and whispered, "He's good for you, you know." Claire just smiled. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rushed. Their love grew in the quiet. In the real. In the way she started saving a mug just for him. In the way Noah would light up whenever Ethan showed up at the door, calling him by name and pulling him inside to show him a new drawing. Claire saw it. The way Ethan looked at Noah. Like nothing in the world mattered more. And then, one fateful afternoon, everything changed. It was just after the rain. The sky still held that silver softness. Claire was sitting on the front porch, sipping tea. Ethan pulled into the driveway, stepped out, and said nothing at first. Just smiled. Then he walked over, knelt beside her, and pulled something from his pocket. The same small velvet box. The same silver umbrella charm, only this time, there was a ring beside it. She didn't cry. Not at first. She just looked at him, stunned. And then softly he said, "You gave me shelter when I had none. And I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never stand alone in the rain again. Will you marry me?" She nodded. Slowly. Then fully. Then finally the tears came. Not from pain. From peace. From knowing that she was no longer carrying everything alone. They had a small wedding. Nothing flashy. Just close friends, a few family members, and Noah, standing proudly in a tiny suit, holding her hand. The vows were simple. The meaning was deep. And when she said, "I do," Ethan whispered back, "Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible." Claire moved into Ethan's home soon after. It wasn't the size of the house that mattered. It was the space they made inside it. She decorated with things she loved, old books, framed recipes from her mother, a handmade photo of Noah's drawing. And slowly that house turned into a home. Noah started calling her Mom one morning, without being told to. Claire froze mid-pancake. Ethan looked at her, eyes wide, waiting for her reaction. But she didn't correct him. She just turned, bent down, and hugged him tight. "I'm honored," she whispered. "Thank you." From then on, it was theirs. A real family. She packed his lunches, helped with homework, tucked him in every night, the same way she used to tuck in her worries. Ethan still worked, but he came home earlier now. Made time. Protected it. Dinner together wasn't optional. It was the center of their life. And weekends were for pancake mornings, movie nights, and slow walks in the park. And as the seasons changed, Claire would sometimes catch herself standing in the kitchen, hand resting on the silver umbrella charm hanging near the window. The same charm that reminded her where it all began. One rainy afternoon, she looked outside and saw a woman hurrying across the street with no umbrella. Claire paused, then smiled, walked to the closet, and pulled one out. Some stories don't end in grand finales. They settle. They deepen. They become a part of you. And for Ethan, Claire, and Noah, that small moment in the rain had become everything. Sometimes it's not the grand gestures that change a life. Not the headlines. Not the big moves. It's the quiet moments. A child left in the rain. A woman who didn't walk past. A man who thought he had everything, until he realized what he really needed couldn't be bought. That umbrella, it wasn't just protection from a storm. It was the beginning of trust, of healing, of something real. She didn't know who he was. She didn't care. And maybe that's why her kindness meant more than anything he'd ever received. In a world that moves fast, where most people keep their heads down, one small act of care rewrote 3 lives. And maybe, just maybe, that's all it takes. At Rich in Love, we believe love doesn't always show up the way we expect. Sometimes it walks in without a name. Sometimes it hides behind silence. And sometimes it shows up with nothing more than an umbrella and a heart that chooses to stay. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone who once showed up when you needed it most, don't forget to subscribe. Like the video. Share it with someone who needs a little hope. And tap the bell so you never miss another story that reminds us what really matters. Thank you for watching. And remember, you never know when one small act of kindness could change someone's life. Or your own.